Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Sword Art Online review. Today's video is going to be my review for Sword Art Online Girls Ops volume number 3, the most recently released volume that's out in English. I don't even think has a date for English just yet, but either way this will basically mean I'm caught up with most of the kind of SAO releases, so yeah, let's get through this. So I obviously criticized Volume 2 quite heavily for being mostly fan service, barely any story in general, and just being very, very different than Volume 1, which wasn't very fan service focused. It was actually a really good exploration of character stuff, giving the characters a chance to shine. And 3 is a immediate return to what Volume 1 was like. There's like basically no fan service in this book. Once again, it feels exactly the same as 1, and that just 2 was this anomaly where they decided to just go fan service crazy, because this is just really character plot focused, and I would definitely say that of all of the volumes of Girls Ops, this is the one where I would say there is the most importance to the overall like Aincrad story as well, in that we get a couple of flashback chapters towards the end of this volume that cover obviously some of Lux's time in SAO and a little bit of behind the scenes stuff of Laughing Coffin, how they worked, plus the hint about another Orange Guild. But yeah, so the gist of what happens here is that at the end of Volume 2, the one thing they did set up was that some of the territories were being attacked by a new PK gang who was kind of killing people. They kind of had immunity to magic. They were using these unique weapons that no one had really used before in ALO. But and here we basically encounter them fairly early on at the start here. They are basically immediately they come out and basically encounter them. What happens is that Lux is given a letter that basically says, forgetting your past and making your friends in the new world, you cannot escape the curse of the skull. She goes outside and immediately sees someone who has left this letter and chases the person, which leads to a fight with this guild, and eventually it takes Sakuya and her forces coming in to basically fend them off, as we cut away from that incident with just Lux saying that the person who's leading this PK guild, I knew her in a prior world. So she knew this person from SAO. There's a new SAO survivor who's leading this guild who, I suppose from part 2 we initially thought was potentially Laughing Coffin, but we're beginning to see that that's maybe not necessarily the case. But anyway, back in the real world, what happens is that Hiyori begins to become a little bit more distant. Hiyori is obviously Lux in real life. Begins to become a bit more distant than him. She's not really explaining the full details about how she knows this person or the details behind that. And what happens is that Sugaha spots Hiyori in the real world meeting up with this girl who we've never met before. But this girl turns out to be the real life person who is the leader of the PK guild in ALO. And we pretty soon find out that her name is Gwen. So this is Gwen that we meet here, who knows Lux from SAO. And they spot this happening and are kind of wondering who's that? What's going on here? And immediately after that in the game, they get a message via the Angel Whisper ring that basically says, Liz, and I'm assuming Silica and Leaf are there too. I'm sorry, I know I should have told you this in person, but I'm using this ring to say thank you and goodbye. I at least wanted to let you hear it from my voice, not just a text. I'm retiring from ALO. So she's basically quitting the game and isn't explaining why to anyone. And obviously our 3 main girls here, Silica, Leafa, and also, how am I forgetting one of the main characters' names? Liz. How did I forget Liz's name? I think the reason is just because I'm constantly going back and forth between their real life names and then their names in the game, just having to remember so many names. But yeah, Lizbeth, they're very upset at this. They really, obviously she's not explaining to them what exactly is going on there. There's a brief meeting with Alicia, and also Sinon is there as well. Sinon is acting as Alicia's bodyguard because obviously the guild that Gwen is running is obviously attacking the leaders and is getting to the point where she's almost able to kind of take them out, and obviously it'll be a big loss to any of the regions if their leader goes down in a battle. So it's pretty dangerous stuff, and Sinon is brought in as a bodyguard for Alicia. So another attack ends up coming in at this point, and it's just this idea that, you know, they kind of come to the conclusion after getting past this attack and doing this stuff that they're not going to give up on Lux. They want to figure out what's going on, and they won't just abandon her to just kind of leave them in this sort of way. And it's at this point that Gwen arrives and reveals herself in the game for the first time. That, like, okay, we see this is what she's like. She kind of has kind of ninja-esque weaponry, like kunai. She has a katana, and so on. Kind of is like a dressed like a kunoichi, basically. So pretty interesting stuff here. And she basically talks about here the idea that I just want to make this world a little bit crazier and more fun, and I want Lux's help doing that. But in order to do that, I need to get rid of some flies bothering her. And the idea here is that she basically wants to eliminate Leafa, Liz, and Silica for the goal of kind of just having kind of Lux to herself for some reason. And we get this idea that what she talks about here is, you know, like, you're not considering anyone else's feelings. What's wrong with that? This warm and twisted world is ripe and ready to fall apart at the slightest shake. Don't you know that all people are selfish and self-serving at heart? I would prefer a world without lies. It's more human to bear your emotions and desires. I want this to be a proper world. So that's kind of the way she's... and then she says, the same way that our former world once was. So basically this idea that she actually made a big connection in SAO. That she felt that people were more honest or something like that in the virtual world, and she appreciates that more than real life. And there's this behind the scenes stuff kind of with Gwen that we don't quite learn about, but that there's something in her real life kind of makes her like the virtual world a lot more, and it's why she acts like this and kind of joins PK groups in like the games and like leads this kind of path, and that she really likes kind of causing this kind of havoc, basically, because in her real life she doesn't seem to be able to do that. So it's a mystery that kind of isn't answered right now, but it kind of sets up the idea that, like, this is the core of what Girls Ops is actually about. It's going to be about Hiyori, Lux, and Gwen here dealing with obviously what happened in the game and caused this kind of them to become enemies to some degree, and also to figure out, I suppose now with Gwen being introduced, what exactly got her to the point where she's like this in the game, where she was part of a PK group in the game and acts like this. So, you know, obviously she's talking to like 2 SAO survivors here, and if Lux was there it'd be 3, and Leafa knows all too well how Kirito feels about this sort of stuff, and they're like, you know, yes, it was hard and there were many painful memories, but we survived that challenge by helping each other out. I know the place where my brother fought so hard to survive wasn't all twisted like you're saying. So she kind of sees like SAO as a place where, like, oh, everyone just gave in to their desires and emotions and kind of became killers and stuff like that. And obviously our perspective on it as the audience, knowing our characters, is that they more saw it as a place where they found some of their closest friends ever and kind of bonded to get through the game. So it's very interesting. But then we get that she reveals to everyone that, you know, you should know that Lux is a member of Laughing Coffin. So finally the reveal comes out from Gwen that she has this vivid tattoo of a skeleton in a coffin on her right thigh, confirming to the people who have kind of gradually seen it over the course of the last while that this is indeed the case, and they kind of realize it kind of has to be true as Lux comes in at this point in time, returning to the game. And basically she at this point Gwen like exits the story for now. Present day Gwen just leaves the story at this point and has basically messed things up for Lux at this point in time, and is leaving Lux here to basically deal with this truth now being revealed and having to tell the girls about it. And that's what we get here, and that she says, you know, I'll tell you everything about what I did back in SAO. And we go to a flashback. We immediately start chapter 15 on floor 32 of Aincrad. They basically say that it's roughly halfway through the clearing of the game. So I suppose that the front line is at like in or around 450, they seem to imply, or something like that. And she basically says, at this stage, when we start this story, she was working with a temporary party attempting an infamous labyrinth that was said to feature a particularly rare drop, and it was bristling with nasty traps. She got separated and was nearly killed in one of the rooms where she couldn't teleport out of. And what ended up happening was that the Laughing Coffin came in there and killed the monster, because they were also looking for the rare drop, and ended up sort of saving her, but then they kind of realized that, like, oh, should we just kill her now that she's here because we're a PK group? And they kind of decide, like, no, actually, like, things are actually quite bad for our kind of section of the Laughing Coffin, that orange players can't go into town and we badly need supplies. What if we just, like, get her to join the group as one of our intelligence agents who never goes orange but kind of basically organizes stuff in the background for us? And so she's basically forced into this situation where, like, she's basically like, they're going to kill her unless she joins the group and supports this group that she knows is killing players. So she's forced into a situation of just, like, die or assist in potentially the death of other players. And you can see how terrified she is, and she reluctantly has to join and accepts the invitation to the guild. And it's at this point that we see her get the tattoo that they kind of... One of the guys has a kind of a special weapon that can directly mark the skin, and he basically... It's a tattoo skill, and that's how he puts the tattoo on her. So that's how she kind of joins the guild. And then she basically explains that, okay, look, I never fought as part of the Laughing Coffin. I never killed anyone. I never went orange. My only role within the Laughing Coffin was to go into town, buy supplies for them, and then organize, like, trades with other people who didn't think they were trading to the Laughing Coffin, but were just trading to me, and I ended up giving those supplies on to the Laughing Coffin. So she still feels like she effectively participated in the killing of other players. That she, in essence, was an orange player, saying, you know, like, it's inescapable truth that I was an active supporting member of the guild. And she says that Gwen was mystified by that too, and that they revealed that at this point, like, Gwen also didn't work for the Laughing Coffin. She was a member of a different orange guild. They didn't directly kill people, but they did prey on other people with PvP tactics as a way to raise funds for their activities. Liz says, you know, I've heard of that. They said that Laughing Coffin had a number of subordinate guilds affiliated with them. Some of them were like bandits or pirates. And Gwen was one of the leader of these guilds that conducted kind of deals with the Laughing Coffin. So very interesting stuff that Gwen ran a guild that was an affiliate group of the Laughing Coffin that didn't kill players, but attacked them to steal stuff, but never actually full-on killed people. So straight away it's just kind of like, okay, we are not in this story like full-on directly dealing with the Laughing Coffin. We're related to that somehow. But none of the, like, actual killer players are really involved here. But we are still dealing with players, some of the players who were kind of somewhat immoral within the game, that they didn't do the thing that we know of most of our good characters. And as the flashback progresses, we basically get the idea that Lux and Gwen often were big as part of, like, the deal making and behind the scenes. They often dealt with each other in terms of doing a lot of the trades. And they actually formed a very close friendship over the course of this. I think there's the slightest of hints that it potentially was more than just a friendship. I don't know if that's just the manga teasing that it was more than that, but because they also kind of did the same thing with Rosa, but I'm not entirely sure. Either way, there's a couple of blushes here and there that it may be more than that, but it also could just be a slightly more kind of, like, teasing type friendship than... It's just the type of character that Lux is, that she kind of blushes a lot or something like that. But either way, it seems that, like, Gwen initially in the past seemed to care about her, and she talks about, what is it she says here? You ought to be grateful that you're still alive at all. They could have easily have killed you and be done with it, right? You know, Lux, I don't think it's wrong to put your own needs before anyone else's. Do this, don't do that, make sure they like you. Who wants to live bound by rules that someone else forces on you? It's much better this way. So that's the idea that apparently in Gwen's real life she has a lot of rules placed upon her, and a lot of it is expected of her, and she actually prefers the freedom of being in SAO where she's just on her own. There are rules of the game and stuff you can do, but you can break them if you want, and there's no one there to enforce them. And there's the slight hint that like it's related to her real life, but she kind of skips past that and just says, you don't really need to worry about what's good or what's evil. Trouble for other people, selfish, who cares, as we kind of go on, and just that. You know, she kind of talks about how, you know, like, I don't know why she seemed to care about me, but I began to feel the same way in return. Since that fateful day, the detestable mark was carved into my skin. It's the first time I'd felt an honest, heartful emotion rise within me, meeting Gwen. She just wanted someone that she could kind of get close to, and we see how close they get, to the point where like you get a moment like this, you know, like when my orange status goes away, let's go shopping in town again, and I'll buy you something. So that's kind of a hint of like, did she just ask Lux out on a date there, or was that just a friendship thing? I'm not entirely sure. And then we move into the section of the hint that, okay, there's rumors that a raid group is forming to take down the Laughing Coffin, and they're doing just a kind of business deal, exchanging potions and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, people run out of the kind of little headquarters they have there and saying that there's a raid group there, as we see the Knights of the Blood Oath come out, and it is in fact part of that raid. The implication here seems to be that most of the raid has been carried out at this point, that they've either killed or captured most of the Laughing Coffin. And as they come out here, they basically confront Gwen and Lux. And obviously the situation here is that Gwen is an orange player. She actively participates in stuff, though she doesn't kill people. So she comes across to other people as an orange player. Lux doesn't, and obviously doesn't directly wear Laughing Coffin clothing. So she would just come across as like an innocent in this situation. And as they know they're basically about to be captured, we get this situation of Lux not having any idea what to do, and Gwen wanting to run away and just manage on her own. And Lux just doesn't know what to do, doesn't know what decision to make, and just ends up kind of not saying anything or doing anything, as Gwen is kind of forced to kind of act on her own. And the assumptions that the knights at this point make is that, oh, the orange player has taken a green player as hostage, and that's what's happening here. Gwen tries to kind of get Lux to say that that's not the case, but Lux is just so kind of caught up in the situation she can't say a thing. And what ends up happening here is that it's this moment that Gwen takes this as a betrayal of their friendship and basically runs off, you know, kind of, you know, the implication is kind of gets captured at this moment, and Lux obviously never went to jail kind of as part of the Laughing Coffin. The friendship was cancelled within the game. Their kind of friend request stuff was cancelled, and that's it. There is an interesting continuity moment here where after this it says, they never found out, you know, fortunately for me, my tattoo was in a place that wasn't immediately obvious. Plus, after that incident, I tried to lay low. The only person who would interact with me then was Rosa. So the Rosa incident in Lux's life happened after this Laughing Coffin incident. So I think that's really interesting, and that I still feel now that there's a ton of stuff with Lux that they still have to go back to and address. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And then like basically Gwen just leaves kind of in present day, saying, you know, your sins will never truly vanish, and kind of is kind of hoping that the girls will decide not to be friends with her anymore. And she's basically really apologetic about this and saying that like she knows that they can't be friends anymore. But then we get a reference to the fact that Silica is probably the closest one to Lux, and she just comes over and says, you know, you didn't do anything wrong. You made a painful choice in order to survive, and you've been grappling with it all this time. And besides, we have no intention of not being your friends anymore, and just saying that, like, we support you. We're going to stick together on this. That what Gwen said isn't true. And Lux is like, this time I can face the past without running away. So interesting setup in that Gwen is obviously still out there. She's going to still be doing stuff in the background. But Lux has gotten past what's happened in the past. But I assume they will still have to address basically the idea of like the betrayal that Gwen feels, addressing Gwen's past, as well as bringing together Lux's past as well. So I'm really interested in the story. I just hope they don't continue the trend in that like every second book is like a fan service book. I want more plot. As I said, I don't mind a little bit of fan service. It's kind of fun and cool every so often, but like part 2 was overboard, and then part 1 and 3 basically don't have any, so it's really random the way they're doing it. But yeah, that's been my review for Girls Ops Volume 3. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the book. But yeah, link to my Twitter, Tumblr, Patreon campaign, and PayPal donation link are in the description. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.